Welcome back, troops. Let's tab 59. Cracking day. It's all right. It's dry, mild, no wind. So I want to talk about standards in the British Army, and in particular, the British Army. I don't know too much about the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force and Royal Marines. So I want to chat to you about bearing and turnout. That's the sort of standards I want to talk about in the British Army. Bearing and turnout. And are those two things, bearing and turnout, what are they? Why are they important? And are those two standards of bearing and turnout slipping? And if they are, what's causing them to slip? Who's responsible? Now, I've been out of the Army almost 10 years. 10 years this year. In May this year, I've been out 10 years. So maybe you could say I'm not best placed to comment on the standards, the current standards of bearing and turnout. However, during that last part of my service 10 years ago, I was witnessing even then that the standards of bearing and turnout were slipping. I spent my last few years at an Army training regiment, not as an instructor. I have been an instructor, a recruit instructor, but the last few years of my service, I was at an Army training regiment, but I wasn't in an instructional role. I was in a logistical role. And I saw it then. I saw it even then, 10 years ago, that standards were slipping. I can remember walking around the camp, cutting about, and I could see the young instructors there, who I'm sure were good at delivering the training, getting their particular lessons across, but their bearing and turnout wasn't great, and they certainly weren't gripping. I didn't see them gripping the recruits. So bearing and turnout, what is it? Well, your turnout is obvious. It's the way that you wear a uniform. If it's clean and pressed and you're wearing your berry and your boots are clean, that's your that's your turnout. You're turning out smart, which, is known as bullshit, isn't it? And I know when I was in basic training, I hated it. I hated the fact that I bore my boots and press my kit all the time. It was become a real chore. It got easier as time went on. So no one really likes bullshit. And I always used to question it. I think, why do I need to do this all the time? But of course, it's important because you need to look smart. It gives you confidence, and soldiers are expected to be smart, certainly in basic training. Now, I know when you go on operations, on exercise, that kind of thing goes out the window. When you're on operations, or even on exercises, certainly when I was in, you never saw two blokes dressed the same. Everyone got different bits of kit on, and it was in rag order, maybe, because you're on exercise, you're on operations. So the bullshit side of that goes out the window. But turnout is important because it installs attention to detail. Now, if you're making sure you're paying attention to detail, that your buttons are done up, you've got the right bits of kit, it's all in good order, you're paying attention to that detail. And that's important because later on operations, when you have to ensure that you pay attention to detail in other areas of military life, like having the right equipment, making sure you're diligent and being there at the right time, all those little things are important on operations to make the mission work. That's why it's installed. That's why turnout is important. Bearing, your bearing, the way that you conduct yourself, the way you walk around. You're not walking around with your hands in your pockets, you're not leaning against the wall, berry on the back of your head, pockets undone, Mars bars sticking out your pockets, etc. Your bearing is important too. And I saw those standards slipping, and I think they're slipping today still. Tell me if I'm wrong. Now, if these standards are slipping, bearing and turnout are slipping, then you can't blame the young soldier, because in basic training, they don't know very much. And the instructors that are placed above them, the junior NCOs, senior NCOs, warrant officers, they're all there to ensure that their bearing and turnout, amongst lots of other things, are kept correct and done properly. So later on, when the soldiers leave basic training, they finish their phase 2 training and they go on to their battalions and regiments, that's when it can start to slip bad. That's when a little bit of familiarity creeps in between the private soldier and the junior NCOs, the Lance Jacks, Full Screws, and that's where it seems to be slipping away. Now, I believe that our armed forces, our young soldiers, are good. I think they're professional and they're good soldiers. So when does the rot start to slip in? Well, it can slip in, like I say, during basic training if the junior NCOs aren't gripping the privates, the recruits, and if the senior NCOs aren't gripping the junior NCOs to do it, and so up the chain of command, the warrant officers and the officers. So that's all important that that's done. In battalion, in regiment, if it's not gripped there, it's just going to get worse. And I think that's what's happening. And as I say, although I'm currently not in the armed forces, you've only got to look at stuff that maybe you see on YouTube, especially on programs like Forces TV, for instance, or BFBS, and you see soldiers being interviewed on operations or exercises or whatever scenario they're in. The biggest thing a lot of you veterans will notice is their berets, their cap badge. It's like Foreign Legion. It's right around by the left ear. Now, I know that, for instance, a parachute regiment have been wearing their cap badges around by the left ear for years because it is quite a wide cap badge. And I think it probably suits going around there a little bit. But check dress regs. The badge of your berry should be over your left eye, or near as to it. But they're right round here. See lads in the rifle regiment, etc. Cap badge is right round by the left ear. And some of the shapes of the berries is incredible. Now that should be gripped. But then it can't be, because you'll see that there's Lance Jacks, Full Screws, junior NCOs wearing their cap badge that way, and senior NCOs, warrant officers, and even officers wearing their cap badge like that. So if these management, the chain of command, are wearing their cap badges round by the left ear, they can't turn round and grip the youngsters, the young privates. So it's a chain of command event. So the problem doesn't sit with the young soldier, the private, it's the chain of command above him is not gripping it and not setting a standard. If you're going to inspect a young soldier, you've got to be absolutely immaculate, whether it's in basic training or out in your battalion, your regiment. You cannot stand in front of that young soldier, ripping him a new one for his kit, state of his berry or whatever, if you're stood there dressed exactly the same. So that's where the rot is. So the problem is with the management, not with a young soldier. So bearing turnout is important. It instills confidence. No one wants to see a soldier walking around in rag order. Yes, out in the field. Yes, on operations, of course. But not in camp in day-to-day life. Now, the uniforms themselves, the days where we used to have different forms of dress, has whittled right down. Before we had, obviously, number 1, number 2 dress, we've still got that, which is the best uniforms, ceremonial uniforms, if you like, no problem with that. We used to have barrack dress, which was for more office-based or barrack-based duties, and that could be quite smart. You could press it up and look very, very sharp. That's all gone. Working dress now is combat kit. It is just a universal uniform, your MTP. That's your daily dress. And that dress, that uniform, has not been designed to be smart, if you like. You know, it's not designed to say you look like you're in barrack dress. It's a working dress. It's a combat uniform. It's designed to be functional. It's not designed to look smart. But it still has to be pressed. It's still got to be clean, pressed, in good order, the buttons done up, and the way you wear it. Your shirt's tucked in if it has to be tucked in. Your belt's fitting properly. So it's all these little attention to details. It's just slipping away. And I think that's a bad thing. I think our army is starting to look a little bit slack. I know the good thing about the British Army is all these different quirks with regiments. We've all got different coloured berries, we've got different cap badges, different patches on our arms, etc. That's all great, but the uniformity of the way it's being worn is going down the toilet, and it's a bit of a shame. So I think bearing turnout is important. I think it's starting to erode. I think it's been eroding for some time, and I think the cause is the management, the chain of command. They're not gripping it. Can't blame the young soldiers. Does being smart and all bullshitty, does that make you a better soldier? You could argue not. For instance, special forces, they don't walk around pulling boots up and and kit like that. They don't do that, and they're fantastic soldiers. But you still have to have that installed in you early on. SAS soldiers, SBS soldiers, operators, SRR, SFSG, call this special units. All these units, they all started off as young recruits in one form of regiment or another and went through the bullshit of basic training. They've specialised by being special forces. They don't need to do that anymore. They've got enough skills to crack on. But the Green Army, if you like, the army that's on show to the public most of the time, walking around garrison towns, being interviewed on TV, they're the ones that need to be smart and looking the part all the time, and they're not. So that's just a little chat about the standards in the British Army, the bearing and turnout, and I just wanted to put that out there and see what your thoughts are. Do you think, as a veteran, do you think our standards are slipping? They've been slipping for a while. And whose fault do you think it is that they're not being gripped by the middle management or junior management? But all the way up the chain of command, really. So let me know your thoughts on bearing and turnout. Yes, I know it's bullshit. Yes, I know it's maybe not necessarily, doesn't make you a better soldier if your boots are polished highly and you've got sharp creases. It doesn't make you a better soldier, I know that. But it has to be installed at an early stage in basic training, and the standards should be maintained once you get to your regiment or your battalion. You should look smart. It's part of being a soldier. But let me know what your thoughts are. Maybe you think I'm wrong. Maybe you think I'm just an old fart that's waffling about and having a moan about the state of our soldiers. But I think it's important. Anyway, what a cracking day. Thanks for your support to the channel so far. If you haven't subscribed to me, please consider it. Not saying do it, saying consider it. Stay safe, troops. Remember, till next time, let's tab.